Resumed.
Yes, I call Mr. Stephen Norn as the next witness. I ask he be sworn or affirmed.
Mr. LaPrairie, I understood that there was an agreement that we would address the new information and evidence that was tendered to us mid-hearing and has now resulted in additional potential findings against my client. Is that not the agreement from yesterday?
Yes, that's true. We are going to do that, but I thought we'd have him sworn in.
We're just going to have the witness sworn, and then we'll get right into your concerns and submission, Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Norn? Mr. Norn, would you like to swear or affirm?
I'll affirm.
You'll affirm. Can you say your name, please? Your full name?
Yes. Stephen Ryan Norn.
Do you solemnly affirm, Mr. Norn, that the evidence that you provide today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, before Mr. Cooper, to be fair to you, I am going to raise one other point before we deal with the point that that was raised yesterday in camera. But the first point I raised is I'm going to be asking you, Mr. Barclay, for permission to question Mr. Norn in the form of a cross-examination. And in that regard, I refer you to the conduct of public inquiries by Ed Ratushny on cross-examination. At page 219, the learned author says, "It is almost inevitable that at some point in most investigative commissions of inquiry, commission counsel will have to cross-examine the commissioner's witnesses. In some inquiries, that will be occasional, but in others, it will be frequent. In some, the cross-examination will be mild. In others, it will be intense. I'm not talking about a cross-examination that is unfair. It is assumed throughout the commission counsel is treating the witness with respect and fairness. The problem is that commission counsel is asking questions that are adversarial in nature. This means they are opposed in interest to the witness, who in these circumstances is usually a party." Also at page 225 of that same text, the learned author says, "Commission counsel have an overriding obligation to assist in uncovering the facts and to contribute to a truthful and complete record. Cross-examinations and related submissions can form the four findings of the report, which in turn can be the foundation for the commissioner's recommendations. Commission's counsel may include that an aggressive adversarial approach is necessary to assist the commissioner in fulfilling her mandate. If so, he can justify the situation as leaving no choice but to abandon the, quote, neutral and dispassionate goals originally articulated." Mr. Barclay, in this case, Mr. Norn has done the following. He has refused to answer my questions relevant to your terms of reference when I put him under oath and questioned him on September 22nd, 2021. 2, he has displayed hostility towards me and disrespect for this inquiry and witnesses appearing before it as follows. And I refer to the transcript. Transcript at lines 2 to 27, transcript 1. "Mr. LaPrairie, this is Mr. Norn speaking. I don't want to hear your voice." This is Mr. Norn speaking at line 27. "Mr. LaPrairie, I don't want to hear your voice. Stop talking. It's my turn to talk." At transcript line 5, transcript 2, line 5, "You're very good at interrupting, Mr. LaPrairie." And this is Mr. Norn speaking. This is Mr. Norn speaking at line 16. "Can you guys not get your crap together? Seriously?" And then at line 18, "Are you serious, Mr. Barclay? Seriously?" That's Mr. Norn speaking. And at line 21, wow, is what Mr. Norn said. And then at line 26, "This is like a farce." This is like a legal farce. Seriously. Then at transcript page 31, line 1, during the testimony of Ollie Williams, it was stated, just a question for the adjudicator. I note with interest that Steve Norn has just used a comment in the Zoom chat to say the word liar. Are we reading those into the record? And then at page 32, line 3, Steve Norn says liar, 30 seconds max. It was more like 5 minutes, Mr. Cooper. In light of the foregoing, I submit I am entitled, with your permission, to question this witness in the manner of a cross-examination.
Mr. Cooper?
Sir, I guess the first comment I have is surprise. I was given no notice of any such intention. We made it a point to provide notice of every application, every point of significance that we were going to pursue in this matter. We were given no courtesy that Mr. LaPrairie was intending to take this approach. A little difficult to prepare for something when you don't know what's coming. I would submit, sir, as well, that Mr. LaPrairie has already demonstrated adversarial tendencies towards our applications, but also with at least one witness, and that is Natasha Schwint. That what we saw in part of his examination of Ms. Schwint was cross-examination, where he was putting questions to her that were more consistent with cross-examination than direct examination. I didn't object because, frankly, the evidence came out precisely as we expected and would have hoped for. But to now discover that this morning an application is being made of some significance without any notice whatsoever, not even 5 minutes ago. We ask, sir, for some time to prepare to respond to this allegation and to look at the reference that Mr. LaPrairie has made to the handbook. He may be right, but he's not right in surprising counsel. And we submit that we should be given an opportunity to prepare a response to his application.
I'm not so sure that this is a great surprise to you, Mr. Cooper. You're an experienced counsel. You will recall in my opening, I spent some time articulating the role of commission counsel, and I focused on, in many cases where there is dispute in the evidence, that commission counsel has a right to cross-examine. And it seems to me, and I'm going to listen to your argument, but it seems to me that there's a pretty good argument to be made, if justice is going to be served, that the commission counsel has a right to ask questions. I'll give you 10 minutes to consider it, but I'm not going to delay this any longer.
Adjourn for 10 minutes.
We'll adjourn for 10 minutes.
This hearing stands adjourned for 10 minutes. Stands resumed.
Mr. Cooper?
I'm reminded, sir, how fleeting 10 minutes is. I managed to get a new coffee. We looked up one case, didn't apply. Our position is this, sir. You've referred to me as experienced counsel, and you're not wrong. And that same epitaph applies to Mr. LaPrairie. And we know that the right to cross-examine your own witness is not automatic. And yes, sir, we anticipated we might receive notice of the intent to apply to cross-examine one's own witness. In this case, as inquiry counsel, no notice was received, no preparation was undertaken. As experienced counsel, I do not expect to be ambushed with matters of substance. As experienced counsel, I expect a courtesy of notice of even small issues. I'm reminded, having taught the bar admission course in Alberta for many years, practice management and ethics, that even in the case of ex parte applications, where the other side is not due any notice at all, it is considered common courtesy and professional courtesy to, as you're driving to the courthouse, alert the other lawyer of the pending ex parte application, because ambush is not how Canadian legal system works. In my experience, in the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, and latterly Alberta, you first, before you make an application like this, you have to have the evidence to make the application before the judge, or in this case, the adjudicator. You don't make the application at the beginning of the examination. You commence the examination and you establish on the basis of the evidence, the sworn evidence of the particular witness, that they are sufficiently adverse as to give right to cross-examine a witness that otherwise you would be limited to direct examination rules. My friend has specifically quoted from a transcript that's not even before you. He made reference to the transcript of Mr. Norn and the objections that were entered. It's a very different matter, sir, on an application like this. And assuming that you concur that this is not an application as a matter of right, that Mr. LaPrairie must establish that this is an adverse or hostile witness, and on the basis thereof, he should have the right to cross-examine him. When you look at the transcript, which to the best of my recollection hasn't yet been made an exhibit, when you look at it, you don't actually see Mr. Norn refusing to answer questions because he wants to refuse. In fact, what you see is me as his legal counsel objecting. And interestingly enough, Mr. LaPrairie never brought those matters to your attention for any sort of ruling as to the appropriateness of the objections. So all we have on that transcript, which as I said is not yet even an exhibit to the best of my recollection, is objections by counsel and Mr. Norn complying with those objections. So he wasn't being hostile, he wasn't being difficult, he didn't establish himself as an adverse witness. All he did was comply with the objections that were entered by his counsel. That, in our submission, is not the basis to grant the application that Mr. LaPrairie has made, notwithstanding on zero notice to me. So, sir, to assume that I am going to know what Mr. LaPrairie is going to do is not fair. To assume that Mr. LaPrairie as your counsel will give me notice of what he's asking to do, let alone what he's intending to do, is the only thing that's fair. The steps in this inquiry that we say are unfair and are undermining any sense of fairness, impartiality, and objectivity just seem to increase by the day. We now have another application with little or no notice. I know that after that matter is done and before we commence into whatever form of examination Mr. Norn is going to be subject to, we have new information which was received just a couple of days ago, upon which I'll be making an application, the result of which is probably foretold. I appreciate that. But in this circumstance, this right should not be granted at present. You have no legal basis, you have no evidentiary basis to grant the request to cross-examine my client. It may come, but it's not there yet, sir. Those are my submissions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. I'm going to call on Mr. LaPerre in rebuttal to see if he's got any further comments.
Well, Mr. Cooper, I don't know if he's been involved in inquiry work before or not. I suspect not, given some of the comments that he's made during the course of these proceedings, including comments that I appeared to be something akin to your lawyer in these matters. I am your counsel in these matters. We clarified that with Mr. Cooper, and he seemed to understand the role that I have. The role that I have is I conduct questioning, and that questioning is made available to you. And the questioning I did on behalf of your counsel, which is the transcript, will be marked here shortly, is a transcript replete with multiple objections to any questions that I asked in relation to the terms of reference. Anything that was relevant was objected to by my friend, and Mr. Norn refused to answer those questions based upon his counsel's advice. I was denied as a result not able to get any information from Mr. Norn in advance of these proceedings, as your rules permit that I get. And Mr. Cooper was present for all of that, after which as he knows, I sent him a letter on September the 24th, and a detailed letter, a letter which over 4 pages, in which I contested that he had any right to advise his client not to answer my questions. He never resubmitted himself for examination. He never told me that he would allow his witness to be questioned. He stood on his objections that this witness would not answer any of my relevant questions in advance of these proceedings. So Mr. Cooper was well on notice that Mr. Norn was adverse to me from the time of that examination that I conducted on September the 22nd. And all of the references that I read to you from the transcript are in the transcript that has already been filed to you, before you, as we get a daily transcript from our court reporter. And the only people who get a copy of that transcript are Mr. Cooper, his client, and ourselves. There's only people entitled to it. So with respect, Mr. Cooper even candidly admits he expected this, and what he expected has occurred. Thank you, Mr. Barclay.
Just a couple of points.
Thank you very much.
A couple of points of clarification, just in response to that. Thank you, sir. The transcript to which I'm referring is not the daily transcript from which Mr. LaPrairie quoted. I don't have any issue with that being properly before you. We don't have Mr. Norn's transcript from which the objections that Mr. LaPrairie was depending upon to convince you to allow him to do as he requests hasn't been made an exhibit. At the same time, sir,
it hasn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
It's before us, though.
The issue, though, sir, is this: during the interview, examination, whatever one calls it, of Mr. Norn, I objected. The recourse from Mr. LaPrairie is not just to write me a letter saying how wrong I am and quoting case law. Presumably, he then goes to commission the inquiry adjudicator for a ruling. I invited him to do so because we maintain our objection. And Mr. LaPrairie can shake his head. But as I understand your role, sir, it's to make these sorts of decisions, and you've made decisions along the way. So the objection was there. There was no ruling on the objection. What is the point of bringing Mr. Norn forward again to ask the same questions and deal with the same as yet unadjudicated objections? It makes no sense. And yet, having said that, Mr. LaPrairie made no efforts to have Mr. Norn appear except to answer the same questions to which we objected. In our view, in our submission, it should have been brought to you for a ruling on the objections, which we understood was going to happen. It never happened. And the fact that I thought he might do this doesn't remove his obligation to provide notice. Our system relies on notice, sir. It's something that we've been complaining about from the beginning. We haven't had proper notice. And here's just another example. And so we oppose the application on the basis that you don't have sufficient evidence before you yet. We have no notice, and 10 minutes, sir, to prepare for something of this nature that could have easily, and by any professional standard of courtesy, have been avoided even last night with an indication, even 3 hours ago, an indication that this application was going to be made. If you had to make an application, it had to be on notice. Without notice, in our submission, you must give us sufficient time to reply. And 10 minutes, sir, with respect, is not enough time to do anything in preparation for something like this.
Thank you again, Mr. Cooper. I've conducted quite a number of inquiries, and I've never had a situation where there's so much powerful reasons as to why I should permit cross-examination. And we've been very fair. I spent some time in my opening going through the role of commission counsel, and a good part of the presentation I made dealt with the right of counsel to cross-examine. I repeated it several times. And there's so much evidence here that dictates that I should allow Mr. LaPrairie to cross-examine. We want to find the truth. That really is my mandate. I want to make sure that all the parties have a fair hearing. You're experienced counsel, and I'm sure that once you've heard the evidence in this case, you would say to yourself, Justice Barclay is going to allow Mr. LaPrairie to cross-examine in the interest of justice. And I'm going to, again, I'm not going to repeat what Mr. LaPrairie has told to me. It's rather basic law in inquiries. But I just want to touch on Professor Ed Ratushny, who is probably one of the leading experts from Toronto on conduct of public inquiries. He's been involved in many inquiries himself, and he's wrote several articles and books about inquiries. I'd like to mention in passing that Professor Ed Ratushny is also a graduate of the University of Saskatchewan. But this is what he said, and I think if you listen to this carefully, and I repeated this in my presentation at the opening, that you would say to yourself, Mr. LaPrairie is going to be cross-examining. And this is what Professor Ed Ratushny said. Impartiality on the part of commission counsel is not to be confused with a lack of rigor and vigilance in seeking the truth. Commission counsel must still act forcibly whenever necessary to overcome resistance that could obscure truth. This persistence is particularly important wherever the transparency of public inquiries, and I'm going to emphasize this, motivates resistance on the part of those with something to hide. And throughout the last few days, that particular sentence resonates to the facts in this case. What makes Commission's counsel role unique is that they must take into consideration the public interest, the interest of all parties, and furthermore must explore conscientiously all plausible explanations and outcomes, regardless of whose interests are advanced. We now have reached a point in the evolution of Commission's counsel role wherever it can be confidentially asserted that every task they undertake must be infused with impartiality, inseparable in degree from that of the commissioner. And all we're trying to do is find out what is the truth. And I think the public and all the parties are entitled to have the benefit of experienced counsel cross-examining your client, and I'm going to allow it.
Mr. Barclay, may I proceed with the second matter?
Go ahead.
The second matter is raised with my friend yesterday was the fact that we intend during Mr. Norn's questioning to introduce evidence that came to our attention only on Monday of this week. And on Monday of this week, we dispatched that new evidence to Mr. Cooper in its entirety. The evidence is a Facebook message that was sent by Mr. Norn on the evening before the commencement of this inquiry at 6:43 p.m. to the Facebook messenger group called Caucus, of which Mr. Norn is a member. The other members in the group include 16 MLAs and 2 staff members. As I say, we gave notice to Mr. Cooper that we had this evidence on October the 4th with a copy of it. We also provided him at that time with a subpoena to have him produce from his client a screenshot of the same message that was sent by Mr. Norn on his phone at the same date and time. I can tell you that this morning we finally received that. Just this morning we received the message that appears on Mr. Norn's phone. We seek to use this evidence in our examination of Mr. Norn. Yesterday in our in-camera session, we agreed with Mr. Cooper to address this at the commencement of Mr. Norn's testimony. The message reads, quote, "I just want to say, fuck you for making my loved ones cry. You squeezed my heart. Whoever backed this, I'm coming for you." End of quote. We intend to use this evidence and ask for your direction. The content of the message is threatening and raises concerns regarding the obstruction of this inquiry process and the possible intimidation of any MLAs who would have been called to give evidence. I refer you to your terms of reference, which is Exhibit 7 in these proceedings. That tab 7 for the benefit of anyone following in the evidence book. Your terms of reference include that you are to judge Mr. Norn, member of the Legislative Assembly, as required by the Legislative Assembly and Executive Council Act with respect to Section 2 of the Act, whether the members shall ensure their conduct does not bring the integrity of their office or the legislature or assembly into disrepute. Section 4, they must carry out their official duties objectively and without consideration of personal or financial interests, and must arrange their personal affairs so as to maintain the trust and confidence of the public. Section 8, this code is not designed to be exhaustive, and there will be occasions on which members will find it necessary to adopt more stringent standards of conduct in order to protect the public interest and to enhance public confidence and trust. And in your mandate, in your terms of reference, which are your mandate, paragraph 3 says the sole adjudicator is to inquire into and report his findings on such other related matters which the sole adjudicator considers relevant to the inquiry. I submit, Mr. Barclay, that the evidence that we received Monday and provided to my friend Monday is relevant to your terms of reference, and we ask to be permitted to introduce that evidence and question Mr. Norn on it.
Mr. Cooper?
I guess I'm on mute. You can hear me okay, sir?
I can hear you quite clearly, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, sir. So the terms of reference, in every matter that we have brought to your attention, and in every application, which includes virtually all of them that have been refused, you have used the terms of reference as a shield to prevent any expansion of your duties. We have not been allowed to go 1 millimeter beyond what you, the adjudicator, perceive as the role given to you by the Legislative Assembly. And yet here we have an application by your council to step outside of the terms of reference and to use the terms of reference as a sword. When my client comes to you as the adjudicator, we're told, stop. You cannot go here because the terms of reference are specific. When we look at your decisions, they are replete with references to the fact that you cannot go beyond the terms of reference. So what do we have here? We have a text or a message within a Facebook group. I don't know where it came from. Where did this information come from? This information seems to suggest that there is an ongoing, some would say, back-channel line of communication with the Legislative Assembly. Who gave Mr. LaPrairie this information? Every other form of communication that we're aware of between Mr. LaPrairie and the legislature has come in the form of a letter, very formal letter. You're appointed, Mr. Barclay. You're appointed, Mr. LaPrairie. Here are the terms of reference, Mr. LaPrairie and Mr. Barclay. Out of the blue, on Monday, we're advised of some new evidence. We don't know the source. We don't know how it got to Mr. LaPrairie. He gave it to us in a timely fashion after he received it. Mid-hearing, no fault of his. And what does that note actually say? Mr. LaPrairie is taking considerable liberties in drawing conclusions about the comments. We know that this is a politicians only, maybe some senior bureaucrats or deputy ministers, I don't know. Whoever backs this is the reference, this. Now, clearly, Mr. Norn is angry about something. What is this? Who backed this? He sends it to his caucus mates. What is he talking about? The fact that Mr. LaPrairie has already put to you that this is intended in any way to have some reference to this inquiry implies that he's already drawn conclusions. Now, either he's guessing or he has more information that has been passed on to him because we don't know how this came to his attention. Mr. Rylund, Mr. Mercer, Ms. McPherson, we don't know. One of the MLAs that was a recipient, we don't know. It again drives another stake into the heart of any suggestion of impartiality and objectivity that Mr. LaPrairie, in his role as your counsel of objective, only looking for the truth. We don't know what the truth is here. Sure, we'll find out if he's given the opportunity to speak to Mr. Norn, but that is putting the cart before the horse. This document of unknown origin, speaking about matters that cannot be derived from the document itself, in the context of communication from one MLA to a bunch of other MLAs in a caucus-specific Facebook page, could be about anything. Now, we can guess, we can speculate, but unless there's more, you cannot consider this as evidence of anything related to this inquiry. Secondly, it is a stretch, to be generous, to suggest that this particular allegation, if it's as pejorative and malicious as has already been suggested, fits into terms of reference. Because to understand where it fits, let's go back to the Code of Conduct. Let's not put a square peg into a round hole. If this is as Mr. LaPrairie purports it to be, it doesn't concern code number 2 or code number 4. It actually probably triggers code number 3. Members must treat members of the public, one another, other MLAs, and staff appropriately and without harassment. Members must take all reasonable steps to ensure work environment is free from harassment. It's probably what you would have received had the terms of reference in any way anticipated this type of communication. You can't read the first part of the terms of reference with reference to sections 2, 4, and 8 of the code that Mr. LaPrairie read into the record without confining those general terms to the allegations that are contained immediately thereafter. Mr. Norn is alleged to have breached sections 2A and D of the public health order. That's got nothing to do with this. Mr. Norn is alleged, in each case, I should say at the beginning, it says in April 2021, not in October, August, September. It is alleged that Mr. Norn in April 2021 breached the public health order, B, failed to self-isolate in compliance with the self-isolation plan he filed, and C, misled the public regarding his compliance with the public health order and/or self-isolation plan. What does this communication have to do with any of that? Now, Mr. LaPrairie looks for support and comfort in the very general provision, number 3, of the terms of reference, that you are to inquire into and report your findings on any such other related matters which the sole adjudicator considers relevant to the inquiry. That has to be read in light of your previous decisions, which refused to consider anything not expressly contained in the terms of reference. It seems patently unfair, obviously unfair, I would submit, to allow Mr. LaPrairie to expand your jurisdiction by 1 iota after all of the rulings against my client's applications in which the shield was the same terms of reference that Mr. LaPrairie now asks you to expand. And if you allow this evidence in, there will be multiple subpoenas necessary because it's not Mr. LaPrairie's interpretation of this communication, and with respect, not even your own, without evidence, sir. The recipients have to be subpoenaed to determine how they interpreted the communication. This is consensus government. It's not something that anybody in the South is acquainted with. It's something that has to be interpreted by the recipients. I cannot imagine an inquiry making any decision on the basis of a communication between one party and multiple others without having at least some of those others, if not all of them, testify as to how they perceived this document. And it doesn't necessarily matter solely what Mr. Norn intended in the sending of the document. If there's two parties to a communication, you as the adjudicator must understand the intention of the sender, but also the understanding of the recipient. Some very well may have interpreted this as having something to do with a political issue about which none of us are aware. It's the nature of politics and caucus that these discussions, the political pull and push of discussions of political matters, particularly behind the scenes, particularly in consensus government, where every member is their own party. You cannot, we submit, make any decision if you allow this evidence to be tendered and allow Mr. Norn to be cross-examined about it. You cannot make a decision in all fairness and carry out your duties under the terms of reference unless we hear from some, if not all, of the MLAs. And therefore, we are looking at having to make a subsequent application for subpoenas. There is an absolute insistence that this hearing is going to go ahead, presumably finish this week. That will not happen, cannot happen, if any fair result is to happen after this inquiry, if we cannot subpoena and prepare for the examination of these witnesses. We still don't know why, despite multiple requests. We still don't know why. There is an absolute insistence that this inquiry be held and presumably completed this week. And that's important in the mind of my client. Why this week? And we have explained our concerns, and you, sir, have indicated that you found it insulting. That doesn't change the position. It is not intended to insult. It is intended to reflect genuine, well-founded concerns that my client has about the timing of this inquiry. So we say this document has no legal foundation to be in front of you. Mr. LaPrairie's preemptive conclusions are an example of nothing other than, we say, a lack of objectivity and a prejudgment on his part as your counsel, which reflects on you, sir, invariably. He is an extension of you, as has been described multiple times in multiple ways in multiple forums, means that if he has pre-decided what this communication means, he either has information that we don't have, that's not fair, or he's drawing conclusions based on assumptions, that's not fair, and therefore either reject this additional information or give us an opportunity to subpoena the multiple recipients of this. Now, I will add one more thing. Just about a few minutes before we started this morning, we got another communication. I'm not counting how many communications. It might be 19, might be 90, I don't know. Ms. Sparrow sent us an email including a redacted version of the evidence. Now, my understanding is that that's a redaction of the version that was subpoenaed from my client. Now, we don't have a problem with the redaction itself because it purports to exclude previous conversations that are irrelevant, specifically irrelevant. But I want to ensure, if this is going to go in, as I expect it probably will despite our protests, that the remainder of the document that we were initially supplied that was generated this Sunday also needs to go in because it includes all of, my understanding, all of the recipients of that communication. So it's unclear because of Ms. Sparrow's communication this morning, and no blame is cast. There's two versions of this document. There's the one that was supplied under the subpoena through our office from Mr. Norn, which might be the one you're looking at there, so I think it's just one page. And then we have the one that was initially provided to us on Monday, which I think is 4 pages, 3 pages long. So if this document is to be admitted, it needs to be admitted in its entirety, with the only redaction being the tiny bit that I've seen on top referring to previous cabinet or caucus communications. Those are all of our submissions, sir.
You
Yes, sir.
wanted to add?
No, nothing further.
Yeah. We'll take a 10-minute break.
This hearing stands adjourned for 10 minutes. Is now resumed.
Thank you very, very much. Mr. Cooper, thank you again for your submission. They were very helpful in respect to assisting me in making my decision. I have decided that in fairness to your client, my counsel, Mr. LaPrairie, will not be permitted to cross-examine Mr. Norm on these documents. And I'm going to ask Mr. LaPrairie to now proceed with this witness.
Okay, Mr. Norn, you've been sworn already. Would you put your microphone on to contest?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to click there, and I just got on there. Can you hear me?
Okay, Mr. Norn, I need to give you this warning. I did it when I questioned you before in your transcript, but it says, I'd like to begin by informing you that pursuant to Section 8 of the Public Inquiries Act, you do have the right to object to answer any question under Section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act. Public Inquiries Act also provides that any witness at any inquiry shall be deemed to have objected to answer any question asked of the witness on the ground that the answer of the witness may tend to incriminate the witness or may tend to establish the liability of the witness to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or any person. And no answer given by a witness at an inquiry shall be used or be admissible in evidence against the witness in any trial or other proceedings against the witness taking place after the inquiry, other than for a prosecution for perjury in the giving of evidence. Do you understand that warning, Mr. Norn?
I do, Mr. LaPrairie.
Thank you. Now, you were examined by me on September the 22nd of this year. Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. And Mr. Barclay, I tendered as an exhibit the transcripts of my interview of Mr. Stephen Norn on September 22nd, 2021.
It'll be so marked as an exhibit. What is their number?
Madam,
We'll get the number later, but it'll be marked as an exhibit.
Madam Clerk, do you have the number?
We've lost our list.
It may be number 28, but I'll check.
If you just check and let me know, then we'll mark it.
Now, during that interview, Mr. Norn, Mr. Cooper objected to all of my questions relevant to the terms of reference. Are you going to answer my questions today?
Yes.
Well, just hold on, Mr. Norn. I can't give and nor can my client anticipate all of your questions, and so I object to the question because it's impossible to answer. It'll depend on the questions and whether there's any valid objection that I, as his counsel, feel is necessary.
Well, let me explain again, Mr. Cooper, that I'm going to be asking questions relevant to the terms of reference, as I did on September 22nd. Will those questions be answered, or will they be objected to on the basis of incrimination?
We'll respond to each of your questions as they are asked. I will not foretell or guess what those questions will be, and I will not predict, because I cannot, any objections that I may have.
Okay, I will proceed then. Mr. Norn, could you please state your full name?
Yes, as I mentioned before, it's Stephen Ryan Norn.
Okay. And you are a member of the Legislative Assembly for the Northwest Territories, correct?
I am.
And you are the subject of this inquiry, correct?
I am.
And could you tell us a bit about your background? Where were you raised?
I'm originally from Denning-New-Quan, anglicized Fort Resolution. I was raised by my great-grandparents, Adeline Mandeville and Maud Mandeville. I was born here in Yellowknife. I was adopted when I was about well, 4 years old, to my great grandparents, custom adoption.
Can you go ahead?
Yeah, I've worked all kinds of jobs, a lot of it in justice. The job I had before was a Crown Witness Coordinator for the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. Um, I'm a former RC MP member who is trained there right in Depot Division in Regina. I've had a couple years service with them. Corrections officer part-time. I worked in the diamond mines with the corporate office here at Diavik, and I worked with BHP in another capacity in security. Went to University of Alberta for 1 year before being a RCP officer, but after I was done a couple of years of the mines originally from BHP, I went to the University of Lethbridge. Then, yeah, I've worked in the ledge before as a constituency assistant as well. So yeah, I've worked in many capacities in public service.
Okay, and I understand that one point in time you competed on the show Canada's Smartest Person in 2016, correct?
One of the most fun experiences of my life. Happier times.
Was that a television show or a radio show?
It was a television show on CBC.
Okay, and was it to test the intelligence of the contestants? And
Yeah, it's not so much just intelligence in its broadest terms. Like, everybody's got emotional intelligence, musical intelligence, and that's what the show was kind of trying to highlight. And yeah, it was lots of fun being in CBC studios in Toronto.
okay, and when was it that you were elected to the legislature? What?
In October 2019.
And in October of 2019, and since that time, have you held a number of positions in the government in terms of a member of committee?
Yes. Up until when we first did our committee's assignments, I was chair of AOC, so that acronym means Accountability and Oversight Committee.
Okay. So you were the chair of that committee on accountability and oversight, correct?
Yes, sorry, yeah, accountability and oversight.
Okay. And what's the mandate of that committee?
Well, in the broadest terms, we are the de facto opposition to cabinet. And I'm up until May of this year, I was chair of that committee.
Okay. And were you a member of any other committees?
Yes, I'm still a member of a few other committees.
Can you name those?
Yeah, well, caucus is one of the obvious ones. I am also sit as on the rules and so the committee on rules and procedures. I sit in as an alternate on the board of management, and I'm missing one, but I can't recall off the top of my head. I feel like I'm missing one, but
Okay. When you were elected in October of 2019, is this the first time you held elected office?
Yes.
And what constituency did you represent?
Tuneda, Willada, riding.
Okay. And when you took office, you swore an oath, correct?
I did.
And if you look at your transcript, look at Exhibit 7 to your transcript.
Are you sure? It looks like Exhibit 6 has my oath of office.
Well, Exhibit 6 is the English version.
Okay.
And Exhibit 7, if you'll see in the top right-hand corner, is in your native language.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So yours on Exhibit 7, your signature appears to the oaths in your language.
That's correct.
Okay, and what language is that?
Chippewa, but our people that speak it call it Denisofina.
Okay. Mr. Barclay, I like that, which was Exhibit 7 to the transcript, which we believe, Madam Court Report, Madam Registrar is going to confirm the exhibit number for that for that transcript. But I'd like Exhibit 7 marked as an exhibit in these proceedings.
It'll be so marked.
We know, Ms. Anderson.
Do we have a number yet, Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, sir. I'm looking for it.
Okay. Okay. And you'll acknowledge that in your oath you swore to be loyal to the people of the Northwest Territories.
Yes.
Now, let's just talk a minute about the Standing Committee on Accountability and Oversight. Did you have an acronym for that?
AOC.
AOC. AOC. Accountability and Oversight, correct? Committee. Okay. And as chair of that committee, in 2020, you conducted numerous meetings, correct?
Yes. The clerk's office have all the records of proceedings or ROPs, and yeah, we held that. That's one of the most. That's probably the busiest committee in the ledge.
Okay. If I suggested to you that you had meetings on April 15th, April 22nd, May 13th, September 24th, December 1st, 2020, does that sound about right?
Again, like I said, I can't, because we have so many meetings. I usually have to refer to them back to the clerk's office. But if you say that happened on those dates, and if I did sign off on them, then I did chair those meetings.
Okay. And you described, did you, the role of that committee as follows in the April 15th, 2020 briefing, quote, to provide oversight into the government's response to COVID-19 and to offer suggestions on how to best respond to the impacts of the virus on communities, families, and individuals, end of quote. You said that, correct?
If it's matter of public record, yeah, I did say that. Yes.
It sounds, that is the correct, that is the role of that committee in part, correct?
Yes.
Your answer is yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Was the AOC assigned to take a lead role in the review of the Northwest Territories government's response to COVID?
Yeah, like a lot of times what we do, we don't always get the best notice from the executive, but for the most part, they do a decent job of giving us heads up. So we as a whole, because we are a consensus government, to review any sort of new initiatives, legislation, policies, and like, again, for COVID response as well.
And you would have recalled that Dr. Condola, the public health officer for the Northwest Territories, would have appeared before that committee on numerous occasions in 2020.
That's correct.
Okay. And what was she doing appearing at that committee, to your knowledge?
You know, as legislators, you know, we have to always refer to our senior bureaucrats for advice. And, you know, Dr. Condola being a doctor and a medical expert, we have to defer to a lot of her advice. So we asked, usually in the presence of the Minister of Health as well, to make sure that we have the best information possible at any given moment to make the right decisions at any given time.
Okay. And so in 2020, the issue of COVID was raised frequently during that committee, the AOC committee, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And who can tune in to that committee? Is the public allowed to listen to the committee's proceedings?
Yeah, you can probably see them in the ROPs, or sorry, the record proceedings. For a lot of the times we have in-camera portions, especially when there's some sensitive information that we have to protect, be it personal information, medical information, and whatnot. But yeah, we have portions of in-camera and public. But you'll have to refer back to the ROPs though.
Okay, okay. Now, I'd like you have your transcript there, and if you get out Exhibit 10 and you get out Exhibit 10, which is your Facebook and tweets, which we marked as Exhibit 12 at the questioning the last day. Let me know when you have that.
Now you said exhibit, sorry, can you just repeat, is that exhibit 10 or exhibit 12? You just gave me
Exhibit 12.
12? Okay, yeah, give me a moment. There's a lot of information here. Oh my goodness. It doesn't have like a.
It should have an exhibit block marked Exhibit 12.
Yeah, I'm flipping through it. I'm just, like I said, it would have been easier if I had like the page number at the bottom, but it's the way that they're.
I agree.
Yeah. That's what we usually do with our larger documents. We kind of do that. But yeah, just give me a moment here. Just ask for your patience.
Take your time and find it.
Exhibit 11. Oh, exhibit 11. Oh, there we go. The exhibit 12, the actual tag is way off to the side. It was difficult to read.
Just under your photo, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Okay. And you'll recall that when I questioned you last day, I asked you to confirm, and you confirmed these are all your Facebook comments or tweets, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'd like to have that marked. It was Exhibit 12 in the examination. I'd like to have it marked in these proceedings.
It'll be marked as Exhibit 32.
That the number we're at?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Norn, are you following this using a paper copy or an electronic copy?
I'm using the paper copy that was given to me by my legal counsel.
Okay, good. Well, are you able to put a sticker on there, make sure that, because we're going to be going back to that document regularly, okay?
The exhibit 12?
Yeah, Exhibit 12. Keep it out in front of you. Would you please?
Okay, I don't have a sticky note per se, but I could.
Okay, that's okay.
I'll put it. I'll tell you what. I'll meet you halfway. I'll put a giant dog tag on it, so that way at least I'll know.
Okay.
Dog tag there.
Thank you. Now, the first entry in your in Exhibit 32 is a tweet, correct? This is you, Mr. Norn, on March 25th of 2020, saying an important PSA from our Chief Public Health Officer. I read that correctly, is that right?
Yep. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so you received a tweet from Dr. Cami Condola, and you retweeted it, correct?
Yeah, it's just, it comes down by my feed, so I'm actually not as good with the tweets, because when I see it come down my feeds, I oh, this is good. This is really good information. I think I should get it out to my followers. And
okay, so you thought this was really good information, and you passed it along to everyone, correct?
Yeah, at the time it was a lot of panic and a lot of fear out there, and
okay, and Dr. Condola says in her tweet that you retweeted, quote, if you were asked to create a detailed list of the places you've been and the people you had in contact over the last 14 days, could you? Social distancing is critical in reducing the transmission of COVID-19. Ask yourself, am I doing my part? And then she put hashtag flatten the curve N.W.T COVID-19, end of quote. You thought that was important information to be retweeting, correct?
Yes, at the time, yes.
And who would you retweet? Who would you retweet that to?
I don't have a lot of followers on my tweets. I have more followers on my Facebook feed. I haven't been too active in social media, but I think I'm up to like, yeah, I have quite a bit.
How many Twitter followers did you have at that time?
I don't recall.
Okay. Now, if you just turn the page on March 28th, that's turn the page in Exhibit 32. This is another retweet that you retweeted of Cami Condola's tweet of March 28th.
Yes, I remember
Correct?
that time. Yeah, yes, correct.
You remember this tweet?
I remember it, yes.
Okay. Quote, one confirmed case in the N.W.T, 762 tests performed, 221 tests pending, disinfecting, really using hard surfaces and objects with antiviral cleaner like bleach or Lysol helps reduce potential transmission of virus. Hashtag COVID-19, hashtag Northwest Territory, hashtag flatten the curve. And you thought that was important to retweet, correct?
Yes.
Now, on April the 3rd, 2020, you posted a public service announcement on your Facebook page. You recall that?
Yeah, yes, I did. Yeah, I'm looking through the pages here. I'm not sure if there's like
I'm going to find it for you. It's going to be at tab 14.
Tab 14?
Tab 14.
So Exhibit 14?
It is also Exhibit 14 and tab 14 in our book.
I'm just gonna try to find it. This. Exhibit 14 here just says something here about public health order from the CPHO.
Exhibit 14 is the affidavit of Jacob Pasco.
I'm not sure if we're referring to the same thing. I don't.
You should be looking at tab 14.
Sir, I might be wrong, but I understood that this was the affidavit that wasn't being entered.
No, we exhibited, Exhibit 14 is the affidavit of Jacob Pasco with the Facebook video that we watched the other day of Mr. Dorn. Is that correct, Madam Anderson?
No, sir, I think,
Go ahead, Madam Anderson.
I have exhibit number 13 titled Affidavit of Jacob A. Paxo, sworn August 20th, 21. That's
Okay,
number
that is
13.
my mistake. That should be, what? Right, but that's Exhibit 13. Okay, my mistake. It's Exhibit 13 found at tab 14.
Okay, I'm
My
reading that
mistake.
now, Mr. Perry.
You've got it now. And were you present when your Facebook video was played the other day?
The video that wasn't maybe.
No, I don't recall that.
Okay. Well, if you look at the Exhibit 8, the affidavit, you'll see a transcription of your Facebook video. You see that?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Okay. You've got that in front of you?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at the hard copy off to this direction here.
Yes. And so what was the purpose of your giving this PSA public service announcement over Facebook?
Well, I thought about it at the time. I know that it affected one of my constituents. Uh, for like when this first started, and I felt, as a leader, you should always try to keep calm. They keep your constituents, I didn't, you don't want to create panic. I felt it would have been good just to, just follow directions from your legal advice. I remember saying that in the video, and I felt it would have been a good message to get out there for the people.
Okay, let's look at your message, Exhibit A, to this affidavit. Good afternoon, everybody. It is now just after 4:30 on Friday, April 3rd, 2020. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Steve Norn. I am the MLA for Tooele-Willowday in N.W.T. As many have heard, reports of a case of COVID-19 in my home community of, and I can't pronounce that. Could you pronounce that for us?
Denny New Quinn.
Denny New Quinn.
Yeah, I pronounce it with a W instead of a U. It'll come out a little better. Denny New Quinn.
Denru Quinn. I would like, and continue, I'd like to let everybody know that this report is true. The said patient is now recovering at the Stanton Territorial Hospital in Yellowknife. With this news, I want to say, everybody, do not panic. It's important to continue to practice safe hygiene practices, social, physical distancing, any instructions from your chief public health office, Dr. Condola, and her staff, your physician, doctors, nurses, public health nurse, local health nurse. These are unprecedented times that we are all experiencing. End of quote. And I imagine that was heartfelt, correct?
It still is.
Okay. Then it goes on to say, through all this, we have went through these scourges before as a community, and we got through it as a community because we worked together. This presents a perfect opportunity to do that. And I fully support all measures that my community has taken right now in Dene Nuke to protect themselves. I'm hoping that we work with each other and with the DKFN. And what is the DKFN?
That is an acronym standing for the Denny New Quinn First Nation.
Okay. With the Métis Local and the GNWT, and of course with my office as well. We work together. We will get through this. It's going to take discipline and patience above all else. Correct? Then you say this COVID-19 is no joke. End of quote. This you're giving this on April the 3rd, 2020. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so that was your view even back then. Correct?
Yes.
It's bigger than politics. Doesn't see through family lines or social status. It infects indiscriminately, and we need to treat it with respect. End of quote. And that's something you agreed to, or in April of 2020. Is something you agreed to now?
Yes.
Okay. And people are still getting the message across. And so effective immediately, I'm going to be lobbying very hard to see that there are liquor restrictions to limit the amount of alcohol being sold in the NWT. I will work closely with the Minister of Justice on that matter. There's still rumors of partying happening, gatherings. Please, please, please do not do this. You are putting people's health at risk.
So did we pause there? Hello, it looks like you're...
Okay, and that was an incident that was going on at that time, is the partying?
Sorry, and for like the last 5-6 seconds, or your feed just froze on me there. Can you just repeat what you said in the last maybe 10 seconds?
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was unstable. I don't know where I cut off, but I'm going to start again. And people are still not getting the message across. And so effective immediately, I am going to be lobbying very hard to see that there are liquor restrictions to limit the amount of alcohol being sold in the NWT. I will work closely with the Minister of Justice on that matter. There's still rumors of partying happening in gatherings. Please, please, please do not do this. Did you hear that, Mr. Norn?
I did, yes.
Okay, and so there were partings going on and you were not approving of that.
Yeah, there was like a lot of reports, people coming in, just yeah.
You're saying you are putting people's health at risk. And then you say, if you have an isolation plan, please follow it religiously. Listen to it. They're there for a reason. They're there to protect us. End of quote. Did you believe that to be true in April of 2020?
Oh yes, yeah, I did, yeah, of course.
Did you believe it to be true in April of 2021?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And again, I'm continuing. And again, this is the time of year where we normally get together as carnival season, where we have our dog races, our talent shows, our outdoor events, where we're getting out and we're in close proximity with each other. We're hugging and shaking hands. Right now, this whole experience is going against the grain as Northerners. I ask again that we be patient, and we'll get through this, and we will get through this together. Is that correct? That's what you said?
Northerners. Yeah.
Okay, and I quote, and above all else, watch each other. Look after each other. I've noticed some social media posts already about this. I ask that everyone be kind and patient with each other. Nothing is going to be gained through bickering and petty arguments. This is going to take cooperation and teamwork with each other. I ask this of all of us. Be patient with our medical staff. They are being bogged down right now, and we ask that we be patient with them and all our frontline staff for that matter. End of quote. That's something you believed in April of 2020 and believed in April of 2021 as well?
Yes.
And then you close. With that, I want everybody to spread the message out there, to look after each other, use common sense, be respectful. If anybody has any questions, you can reach me via email, and then you give me the email. So I read that correctly. Is that correct, Mr.
Yep.
Norn?
And I said Marcicho at the end as well.
Okay, and you signed off with that greeting, right?
I did, yeah.
Thank you. Then if you go back to your Facebook posts and Twitters, which we've marked as Exhibit 32, I want you to go to the tweet on May 17th, 2020.
May 17th. Yes, I see it running. The emergency,
Okay.
the emerging WISE plan.
Right. And on May 17th, 2020, this is a tweet that you originated. You didn't retweet this one, right?
No, it looks like I did type that out.
Okay. So you sent this tweet out yourself.
That's correct.
Okay. And you say, quote, Steve Norn, COVID-19 has been a thought-provoking, forced staycation for all of us. We need to exercise patience and discipline until a vaccine completely stops this thing. Take care and have a safe, long weekend, folks. And you then attached a copy of the Emerging Wisely plan from the Northwest Territory to your followers, correct?
Yes.
Your answer is yes? Thank you. And now on the next The next document is the next page in this exhibit, and this is on March in March of 2021. Just a second.
March 26th, I think you're referring to?
Yes, I think that's right. No, I missed one. If you look at the one for November 18th, 2020, a retweeting of Dr. Condola. Okay, is this a retweet that you retweeted on November 20th? November 18th, 2020?
Yes.
And Dr. Cami Condola, Dr. Condola is the public health officer for the Northwest Territories, correct?
I think her formal title is Chief Public Health Officer.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. And she writes, Public Health Advisory. With COVID-19 surging in Canada and trends in household transmission, we have updated our self-isolation rules. We know it's not easy, but let's keep doing our part to keep each other safe. Details at the link. And that was an updated public health advisory that you retweeted out, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then if you turn the page, we're now on March 26th. And this is in 2021. Is this a Facebook posting of yours?
It is.
And it reads, good afternoon, folks. I finally had my first Moderna shot. Masi Cho to the nurse Jessica for educating us and doing a great job. I will be in session next week with my colleagues for 3 days to finish off our 2021 budget work. Take care and have a great weekend. And there are a couple of photos there. Is that you? You've got a mask on. So is that you getting your first Moderna shot?
It is.
Okay. And in the one picture, you and the nurse are both giving thumbs up to that, correct?
Yeah, I remember her being really informative and answering my questions and very, very friendly.
Okay. And you have a general respect for the nursing profession, correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And you know they perform an important role in the dealing with COVID-19.
They do.
Okay. Both as treating nurses and as nurses investigating situations where there has been a transmission of a virus, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, that was a Facebook post of March 26, 2021. You got your Moderna. And on April 1st, you filed a self-isolation plan with Protect Northwest Territories, correct?
I did.
And if you'd be so kind, Mr. Norn, as to look at Exhibit 2 to your transcription, your transcript of last day. Tell me when you've got it.
Here, open it. Flipping back to very thick paper document. Just give me a moment. Number two. Exhibit to SIP archive. Dated March 15, 2021.
It's no, it's the SIP archive 20210315.
I said in a different order, but yeah, that's what I'm referring to. We refer to, yes, I see.
But it's marked Exhibit 2 in front of you, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so this is the SIP, the self-isolation plan that you filed in order for you to come back to the territories after visiting Grand Prairie, Alberta, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I'd like that marked as the next exhibit. It was Exhibit 2 to the transcription. I'd like to have it marked in these proceedings.
That'll be Exhibit 33.
And in your self-isolation plan, you indicated your arrival back in Yellowknife was anticipated to be April the 4th, 2021, correct?
That's correct.
And that did turn out to be the day you returned. That is April the 4th, 2021.
Correct.
Okay. And you received a notice of approval of your SIP, self-isolation plan, on Friday, April the 2nd, 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if you, to answer that, would you look at Exhibit 3 to your transcript?
Yeah, it's the letter from the COVID.
The letter
call
from the government. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's a response from the project officer from the COVID call center that I got this letter from.
Okay, so that you understood this to be your approval of your plan to self-isolate.
Yes.
Okay, and that's Exhibit 3 to the transcript that has to be marked as an exhibit in these proceedings.
That'll be Exhibit 34.
Do you have that in front of you, Exhibit 34?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to read briefly from it. The letter by email. Dear Stephen Norn, notice of approval to self-isolate in a designated community, self-isolation plan. Thank you for submitting a self-isolation plan, bracket SIP, end of bracket, to protect N.W.T. Your SIP has been approved pursuant to paragraph 2 of the public health order respecting travel restrictions and self-isolation protocol. Upon arrival in the Northwest Territories, N.W.T, you are required to complete 14 days of mandatory self-isolation in Yellowknife, starting April 4th, 2021, up to and including April 18th, 2021. I think you told me last day you read that at the time.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You read that at the time you got this?
Yeah, I did. Yes.
Okay, and did you understand it?
For the most part, yeah, it looked pretty straightforward to me. Like, I looked at when I went down and read it, I seen like the symptom checks and isolation location and that sort of stuff. And yeah.
Right, and it also is pretty simple that you were supposed to self-isolate in Yellowknife starting April 4th, 2021, up to and including April 18th, 2021. You understood that to include all of April 18th, 2021 when you got this.
Well, just to clarify, Mr. LaPrairie, when I read that, it was like, okay, April 18th. Maybe when I did, I will say that it looks like I misunderstood that. I saw that to be like out of my isolation on the 18th.
You thought you weren't to isolate on April 18th, even though it says including April 18th, 2021?
That's correct.
Okay. So when did you, after you read this, when did you think you were no longer having to isolate?
I know I got that email from Protect N.W.T that I think we talked about this already, like on 2 o'clock in the morning on the 18th, or yes, the 18th.
Okay. Now, this self-isolation plan, were you involved in seeing this as the plan was developed and provided to members of the legislature? Were you familiar with it, I should say, prior to getting
Yeah, I was just
yours?
gonna say, I wouldn't share this with the other members. This is private information. Well, it's not private now anymore. But no, we knew that this is this is what was going to happen as a government.
Right. And if you look at the third page of it, where it says the Appendix A, tell me when you've got that.
Appendix A.
It's the third page of the document, Mr. Norn.
Yeah, compliance conditions and self-isolation.
Right. Compliance conditions. After entering the N.W.T, you are required to comply with the following. Follow all criteria outlined in your SIP, including self-isolation location and duration. Self-isolate immediately upon entering the N.W.T. Self-isolate in a unit that is separate from where individuals are not self-isolating. If not possible, the entire household must also self-isolate for a full 14-day period. You understood that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were traveling to Grand Prairie in the company of Tricia Smith, correct?
Correct.
And so when you returned, you self-isolated with Tricia Smith, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you look down, it says, you see where it says do not do certain things? You see that?
Yep, I do see it.
Do not make any stops on your way home if possible. Do not share eating utensils. Do not invite visitors into your home. Do not isolate with anyone at high risk of becoming seriously sick from COVID-19. Do not go to school, work, or other public areas. You knew that, correct, when you got this plan?
Yes.
Okay. And you knew as well that you would be contacted by, during your isolation, you would be contacted by Statistics Canada on days 2, 6, 10, and 14 of your isolation?
Yes, very strange system.
Okay, explain it to me as you understood it.
Well, so we get our email, we got our calls, like we get the emails from Protect M.E.T, but we get these calls from down south from people that are not from the north to call in to us, and it just seems like there's a disconnect there, but that's I think more of a political decision. I think that was just something that I don't. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, you're the politician, right?
Yes.
And so there was Statistics Canada were checking up on you, but also you were receiving emails from the N.W.T to do symptom checks, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You were told that you were going to get symptom checks from the Statistics Canada, but you were also getting symptom checks from N.W.T by email.
Yeah, that's what I recall. Yes.
Okay. And so did you complete those email requests from N.W.T advising of your symptoms on day 2, 6, 10, and 14?
I did.
Okay. So you traveled to Grand Prairie and you left on April 1st. When did you arrive in Grand Prairie?
Oh, geez, I have to go back through my notes. I believe we stopped one night in high level because it was late when we left, and then we got on the second night, from what I recall.
Okay, but you returned to Yellowknife on April the 4th. You've already told me that.
Yeah.
Right. And what time did you cross the border coming back to Yellowknife on April the 4th?
From what I recall, it might have been in the afternoon, sometime early afternoon. I don't remember. I do. I do someplace remember seeing what time I crossed. Yeah, it was early afternoon, to the best of my recollection.
Okay. What did you say? What's up? I'm just going to find a document. Dorothy, did you want to take a break?
That'd be a good idea.
Okay.
We're going at what, 15?
Yeah, 10.
We're going to take a break for 15 minutes.
Okay.
This hearing stands adjourned for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Meeting is now resumed.
Thank you, Mr. Norn. We're back after our break.
Yes.
Um,
Mrs. Perry, if I could just make a quick clarification for you.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going back. I had some notes for my timelines when I went down. So I left Yellowknife on March the 31st, but we stayed that night at high level. Nights April 1st and 2nd, Grand Prairie Hotel. And on the last night, on the 3rd of April, we stayed with my daughters at their mother's for the last night, and then we drove back that early next morning.
Okay, what are you referring to when you're saying that? You've got some notes that you're following along?
Yeah, I just I went back through my whatever remember, because I was trying to think back to it. I was like, no, we're there for I think 4 nights, and I'm like, okay, good night. So I wrote it down. I was like, okay, yes, it was this. I said it was a few days after my Moderna shot, so I was trying to keep a timeline. And then I left Yellowknife. Yeah, we left Yellowknife on the 31st with Trisha. Then yes.
I'm more interested generally in what kind of notes have you got in front of you. I didn't know you had notes in front of you.
Well, here's what I got. I got a picture of my daughter here in front of me, just as a nice little.
Okay, right.
It's just like a little, I went back, I was trying to recall it, and above it, I just said, stop and let my lawyers do their job, and a little box there says,
okay.
If you lose your temper, they will win.
Okay, well, could you close that up and not refer to it unless you ask to refer to it?
Well, I'm still gonna look at a picture of my daughter. I'm gonna put it right in front of my computer.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Okay, can we go ahead now, Mr. Norn?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna close my notebook.
So when you returned to Yellowknife, you were self-isolated with Tricia Smith, correct?
Correct.
And at what residence were you? What was the residence you were at? Tricia Smith's house, or your house, or her house?
It was under both our names, I believe, the lease. So that would be at 904 Williams Avenue, Yellowknife.
What was the name of the street? Williams?
Correct.
Thank you. Now, on April the 8th, 2021, did you have contact with your daughter, Sine?
I did.
Okay. When we were first asked about that by the nurses that when they were contact tracing, you didn't recall that?
Yes, and I just want to give some context on that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So when I was in isolation, I want you to know and the public to know that I was under a barrage of calls, emails. There was like a social media siege on my account. I had so many calls from various sources. I was sleep deprived. I was exhausted, and I do remember talking to, I think, Nurse Stephanie. Say, I will, like, there's stuff here, we did so many things. Like, so I said, what if I do recall something? I will let you know as soon as I can. And they were okay with that at the time.
Okay, so at first you didn't tell them you visited with Sine on April the 8th, 2021, but subsequently you did on April 23rd say that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
If that's what it says according to your records on the 23rd.
Okay. And what were the details of that visit on April 8th with your daughter?
I recall getting a call from Natasha. They were driving towards the multiplex. So just to give you some orientation, so I remember getting called, and Sino was just picked up from the airport, and they rolled up. So the passenger side was closest to the curb. It was close to my residence. I didn't have to walk around to the passenger side. So they're driving in that direction, and Cena rolled down the window and said, "Daddy." Yeah.
And so you hugged her and kissed her?
Yes.
Your answer is yes, correct, Mr. Norn?
Yes.
Okay. And did you speak to her as well?
I just said, I missed you. Like, I haven't seen her in like a couple of weeks. And I didn't want her to go in the first place just because of everything I was giving her that was going on. But I mean, yeah, that's how that went down.
Okay. And how long was your conversation with her?
Oh, with my daughter?
Great.
Geez, was brief. Couple of
She
minutes
just
maybe.
come back from a ski trip, correct?
Yes, yes. Their family's they do very well for themselves, and
I'm sorry, your voice is trailing off, and I'm not hearing
We're
it.
really having
Oh.
trouble hearing you. Would you just speak up, please? We're all very
Oh.
interested in what you're saying.
Okay, sorry. Yes, she did go on a ski trip with her grandparents, and I think a couple of other relatives. They went to BC. I don't even recall where they went at the top of my head. I think they might have went to Trail BC, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so did you talk to her about her ski trip?
No, it wasn't even that. I just said I missed you. Like we can't stay. Like I said, I can't stay too long. And it was at that point I'm like, oh crap, I shouldn't have gave her a hug and kiss. And I'm like, it was just one of those in the moment, like if like as a parent, you see that your youngest, well, like your daughter, your child wants your affection, and yeah, and I apologize for that. I know I did wrong there, and but it was just out of emotion, and yeah, I love my children.
Okay. Now, we've heard some evidence about, when you said you referred to Natasha, you were referring to Natasha Schwint, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And does she live in relative proximity to the place you were staying at, the 904 Williams?
Yeah, it's not too far. I'm gonna say 500-600 meters. It's not far at all.
Okay. And so on April the 14th, morning of April the 15th, around midnight and thereafter, do you recall leaving the home where you were self-isolating?
I did.
Okay. And how many times did you leave the home that night?
I remember going out, forgetting my phone, and arguing with Miss Smith. It was a tough time, like during isolation. We argued a lot. I and I left. Like I didn't want to argue with anymore because there was our conversation was getting heated after I picked up my phone, and I walked in the direction of Miss Schwint's home, and I remember Miss Smith following me, and I didn't even want to argue. Like I wanted to de-escalate the situation, and I figured if I walked towards Tasha's because I know they don't see eye to eye. Like I figured that she wouldn't follow me, so the layout. So I kept walking, and I didn't say anything to her. I remember that. I said I just didn't want to have any. I figured if I said something, it would trigger further argument, and I didn't want that. And I walked up. You walk up a little bit of an incline up into Miss Swin's residence, but there's kind of like a little courtyard in there. I walked up a little ways and kind of went out of view a little bit, and I remember Miss Smith heading back, and I waited because I'm like I waited for her to watch. I could see her walk, so I went back. I doubled back. I didn't go into the residence. And I remember going for a short walk, heading back towards the monkey tree, and there's like northern fancy meats. And I walked up towards that area, and just because I know when I wanted to be out of view of Miss Smith, I didn't want her to follow anymore. So I went for a walk, and I needed to clear my head. And I went down to like Camp Lake for a long walk. I must have went for like 45 minutes at least. It's quite a ways down the camera. You kind of went back, and I remember like thinking, I'm gonna wait till Miss Smith is asleep, and I went back, and I went into my vehicle to warm up because it was a little bit chilly, and I stayed in there for a little bit. I just listened to some music, and I just again still trying to clear my head. I was like, it was really kind of surreal, you know. Like I said, we've been arguing a lot, and I guess I found out later that the police were called, and I was never interviewed. I didn't know about it till afterwards, and but I waited a little longer, and I say I went back in the house maybe. Geez, it's like I said, I'm trying to get all the time. Whatever I call it, I went back in maybe 2:33, maybe around that time, and I went to sleep on the couch, and that was not a pleasant experience.
Steve, your voice is dropping again.
That wasn't a pleasant experience.
Okay. Yeah, it's better when you talk closer to that microphone, if you could. So, other than Tricia Smith, did you come in contact with anybody around midnight on April 14th, or early morning of
Oh no,
April 15th?
yeah, there was nobody out at that time. Even when I went for a walk, I think you saw a few vehicles drive by, but that's about it.
Now, when Ms. Gilbert, now I want to talk about April 17th, 2021. When you spoke to Ms. Gilbert, you said that you stayed home on April the 17th, 2021.
They gave so much information. I don't recall that conversation, honestly.
Okay. So if she says you told her that you stayed home on April 17th, 2021, you can't deny that.
According to her, yes, I like I said, I don't recall.
You recall being on a conference call on April the 22nd, where you were specifically asked about your activities on April 17th, 2021, and you said you did not leave the house all day on April 17th?
Again, when I was thinking about this, like as I mentioned before, I had so many calls. Again, I got threats, and I don't even recall specifically that conversation on the 22nd. Like I remember talking to, it might have been Nurse Rylund, but I can't remember at the time. I don't remember.
Okay, so when it's said that you were specifically asked about your activities on April 17th, and you said you did not leave the house all day, you can't recall what you said.
No.
Okay, and on April 23rd, Ms. Gilbert called you and asked if you had been to the Legislative Assembly. You stated that you went to the Legislative Assembly on April 18th.
Yes,
you recall that?
Yes, I do, and I got my dates mixed up. To be honest, I did get my dates mixed up. I remember counting. I still remember like I know we referenced that letter earlier, but what I did at the time was I looked at the calendar. I'm like, I counted the days from the 4th to the 17th. Okay, that's 14 days. I'm like, I got to grab some items from the ledge. Yeah, that's what I recall.
Yeah. Well, when you went to the ledge on April 17th, you knew that was in your period of isolation.
Afterwards, yes.
What do you mean afterwards?
Like I said, I counted the days, and honestly, I'd forgotten about the letter. Like I remember, like I said, I counted the days, and yeah, and I'd already mentioned, and that I realized that I did that in error. That was an oversight on my part, and I apologize for that.
Okay. So you admit that you did go to the legislature on April the 17th.
That's correct.
Okay. And you also met your daughter on April the 17th, correct? Sine? And
Um,
Hunter?
no, I did not. I'm not sure where you got that information from.
Okay. During the April 23rd, 2021 interview, Ms. Gilbert asked you about the visit. You disclosed that you met with your daughter, Sine, and ex-partner Natasha Schwint on April 17th.
I don't recall that conversation. I don't remember that.
Okay.
I do remember grabbing a bag out the house and a bag of items, but that was about it. I don't recall seeing Cena.
So but you saw her on April 8th. Did you see her? Now listen carefully. Did you see her at any other time?
No, just on the 8th.
Just on the 8th.
Yeah.
Okay. So you attended the legislature on April 17th, 2021 at about what time?
Oh, this was in the afternoon. I want to say, from what I recall, around four-ish, around that time. There's camera footage of it.
Yeah. And you knew you weren't supposed to go to your work, and yet you went to your work on April 17th.
Well, just to be clear, at the time, like I said, I count out the days myself, and if hindsight's always 2020. If I could do it over again, I would have contacted public health and just to get some clarification on it, because a lot of the messaging was to be honest, was confusing. Again, I would have done it that way, but now we're here.
Okay, so when you went to the legislature on April 17th, did you think your isolation was completed?
Yes, at the time.
Okay. Now, when you were at the legislature, who did you see when you were there?
So that's the security personnel. Oh geez, I forgot his name off the top of my head. He testified.
Mr. Brain?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Robert Brain. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see anyone else?
No, there were kids outside, and that's all. I remember seeing kids. They were running around there. I can't even remember that. Yeah, there. I remember them being on the outside. I was wearing my mask. Yeah, that's all I recall.
You entered the building. Mr. Brain let you in.
That's correct.
What did you do after you entered the building?
I was looking for my glasses, and I knew because for me, like Mondays and Tuesdays, are pretty busy days for constituency work. It's for whatever reason that's the pattern of how we do our work. We usually get a lot of calls, and I realized, like, I always have like hard paper copies of consent forms. I grabbed a couple of those. Because a lot of elders, they don't use electronic documents. They just like to sign, and they just give me their consent forms to do work, constituency work. I remember grabbing glasses and another item I can't recall. But I remember the glasses and the consent forms are important.
And when you were there, how long were you there?
Oh God, no longer than a couple of minutes. It was in and out.
Okay. Did you come in contact with the children that were playing outside?
I don't recall. No.
Okay.
No.
You might have come in contact with them?
No. That's something I remember. No.
Pardon me?
I said that was no. No, I did not.
Okay. So other than April 17th, 2021, did you go anywhere else than the legislature?
So can you be more specific with the timelines?
Anytime during April 17th, 2021, the day you went to the legislature, did you go anywhere else?
No, I think I just went home there and back. Yeah.
Now, on April the 18th, 2021, did you get an email from Protect Northwest Territories?
Yes, I saw it that morning, and I looked at the timestamp. It said just after 2 a.m.
Okay, and we looked at that during your last question. If you look at Exhibit 4,
Exhibit 4. You want it?
you have that?
Yeah, I'm
This is
still.
a screen. This is a screenshot of the email that you received from Protect Northwest Territories,
Yes,
correct?
correct. A little bit difficult to read here
This,
because the contrast is kind of funny on this, but I could see what it kind of the gist of what it says.
and it says, "Hello, Stephen. According to your date of arrival, this is day 14 since entering the N.W.T. You must confirm whether or not you are experiencing any symptoms. If your date of arrival was 4/4/21 has changed, you must contact Protect Northwest Territories." End of quote. So you got this, and you knew this was day 14. You got this at 2:04 a.m. on April 18th.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, right. And so you knew you'd been to the legislature the day before.
That's actually at the time I got my dates mixed up. I did.
Well, you told us that on April 17th you thought you were not, it wasn't necessary for you to isolate, but here you're getting an email that says on April 18th this is your 14th day.
Yes.
So you were at the legislature during your self-isolation period, correct?
Yes, and later on that week, this is important. I think I talked to Mr. Glenn Rutland, and I said, you know, I didn't. I followed all the rules, and I'm like, I pretty sure like I did everything what I was supposed to do. And then he said, Mr. Norn, you were at the ledge at the 17th. I'm like, oh, that's when I first clicked in that, just so you have some context. And I realized, oh, darn, I have my dates mixed up.
So you did realize that you had breached your self-isolation plan.
Correct.
Excuse me, sir. I want to interrupt because I don't know if Mr. LaPrairie's crossed the line, but I think he has in misstating the evidence thus far. What this witness has said is that on the 17th, when he went into the Legislative Assembly, he was under the impression that his self-isolation was over that day. Mr. LaPrairie appears to be conflating the status of my client's mind at that date with subsequent to the receipt of the email. And in fairness to Mr. Norn, needs to be a distinction about whether he's being asked questions about what he thought and knew on the 17th before the email was received, and what he thought and knew on the 18th after the email was received.
Okay, so on April 18th, when you received this email, did you realize that you had been at the legislature during a period of your self-isolation?
Afterwards, yes, I did.
Okay, so you realized that you had breached your self-isolation on when you received this email, correct?
At the time, no. As I mentioned before, it was when I had my conversation with Glenn Rutland that I realized, yes, I was at the time, you know, when I spoke with him.
Well,
I
Mr.
can't remember.
Mr. Norn,
You're interrupting me. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Norn.
Yeah. So I just so you know, like I said, when I had that conversation with Glenn Rutland, that's when I realized that yes. And I look back, I'm like, yeah, I breached.
So your testimony is that when you got this email that says, you got this email on April the 18th, 2021, that says that's day 14 of your self-isolation, It didn't occur to you that you had breached your self-isolation the day before when you went to the legislature?
As I mentioned before, Mr. LaPerry, afterwards, like later on the week when I got the barrage of calls, Glenn Lutton was one of those calls, and I said, "This is what I recall doing. Like I got it, and I was understanding the 18th I was done." He's like, "But inside of that, you're like, no, no, Steve, you're an allege." There, we got footage of it on camera. I'm like, that was when I realized that was the point I wanted to get across.
You recall telling Tricia Smith that you had breached your isolation period on April the 17th?
No, I don't think I even told her, from what I recall.
Okay. You don't recall telling her that you, on April 17th, you did go to the legislature and she was quite disappointed with you?
No, I don't recall that. No.
Okay. I'd like to have that exhibit 4 marked as the next exhibit in these.
Marked as Exhibit 35.
So did Statistics Canada call you to do a symptoms check on April 18th?
Yeah, they called later on that afternoon.
Okay. And what was involved in that?
They said, this is day 18. Again, it was like one of those, it was a short message. So like, yeah, like I realized, I said, hey, that I realized this is day 18. Yep. And yeah, and they said that we just want to do your symptoms check, and that was it. And that's what I remember.
Okay, I'm not hearing you correctly, clearly. Did you say that they phoned and said this was day 14 or day 18? I thought you said.
Day 14.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So when they called in the afternoon of the 18th, they told you that was day 14. Correct? Right. Did it occur to you then that you had been to the legislature the day before on April the 17th?
Mr. LaPierre, I think this is the third time I'm saying it. When I got that barrage of calls, after all this, because after the craziness that happened in the middle of that week later on, it was the conversation with Glenn Rutland that I realized, oh, that I breached.
Okay. And on April the 18th, did you attend the Yellowknife Racket Club?
I did.
Okay. What time of day?
It was in the afternoon, from what I recall.
Pardon me?
It was in the afternoon, from what I recall.
Okay.
Did you need me to speak up a little louder? I'm like, you've been asking me questions.
Yes, I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And so you say it was in the afternoon?
Yeah. Yes.
And how long were you there? And who did you see when you were there?
I remember seeing a couple of members like in there. Like there's really no contact. Like where I went in there, changed in the locker room, went in the sauna for like I think 45 minutes from what I recall, and I left, said hi to somebody down the hallway, and then I left.
Okay. And did you consider this to be a day of your isolation?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Well, I was under the standing, like from the phone call and the email, I was of the understanding that my isolation was done.
Was over on the 18th of April?
Yes.
Okay. Now, During your conversation with phone consultation with the nurses at the contact tracing, did you say that you went to the Racket Club on April 19th, 2021?
I'm hoping I'm not getting my date confused. No, because the 19th was the Peace of Saigon, and from what I recall, the 18th was the Racket Club, if I could remember correctly.
Now, did you deliver any parcels on April 18th?
I did.
Okay, and who did you deliver them to?
Remember going to Sole and Dillabos. My middle child had a care package for Miss Dillabau's daughter from Grand Prairie.
Okay, do you recall telling the nurses doing the investigation that you delivered them on April the 19th?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you recall telling the nurses at the who were doing the exposure investigation that you delivered those parcels on April the 19th, 2021?
Again, I don't recall. So the 9th, can I just check my calendar really quickly, if you don't mind?
Sure.
I think the packages were Monday, actually, now that you mention it. I think the Racket Club was only on the 18th.
You think the packages were on the 19th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, this is a while ago, you know. Hindsight's always
Okay.
20/20. You go back and think, I mean, if you went back and yeah, well, continue on. Sorry, my apologies.
Now, did you hear Sue Ellen Dillabo testify that that package that was delivered was on April 18th?
I didn't hear that part. No.
Okay. Would you have any reason to doubt that?
No, no. No, I wouldn't doubt that. No.
And then on April the 19th, did you resume your daily routine?
I resumed my daily routine on the 18th.
Okay. So what time on April 18th did you resume your daily routine?
In the morning, I guess. I don't think I left in the morning. Just the Racket Club on that day was really the only thing I might have went to Tim Hortons, from what I recall.
Okay. Now, when did you say you spoke to Mr. Rutland? And
It was later on that week.
Okay, can you put a date on it?
No, I think it was the middle of the week, right? So I remember 19th as well, though. It's important. The 19th is everyone that's when I went for lunch with my friend, dropped him off at the airport. He tested later negative because he had to go get tested. But I remember going through my emails later that evening and getting a wastewater advisory. I'm like, stating that if you're traveling from I think I can't remember what day it was, but we're traveling during that time to recommend that we go get tested. I'm like, okay, this is probably what I should do is to get tested once I got that.
Okay, so in relation to you getting tested, when did you talk to Mr. Rutland?
So I got tested on 20th. Was positive the next day. It might have been that night or the 22nd. It was either 21st or 22nd from what I recall that I talked to Mr. Rutland.
Okay, and I'd like you to look at a media statement that you issued, and we looked at it last day when I questioned you, and it's Exhibit 5.
Yes. I see it in front of me, yes.
Okay, and this is a media statement that you issued on April the 23rd, 2021, correct?
That's correct. Well,
Okay.
are you saying, wait, I released this statement on the 22nd?
Yes, it says April 23rd.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, it says 23rd there, so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. It's April 23rd. And it was marked Exhibit 5 at your examination, your questioning. And I'd asked it to be marked as an X exhibit here. What is it?
36.
Now, it's attached to an email from L.A. PAC. What's that? Legislative what?
So what are you looking at right now? My apologies.
I'm looking at Exhibit 5, your media statement of April 23rd, 2021.
Okay, so what line are you referring to on this? What paragraph?
I'm referring to there's an email that says from LPAC sent April 23rd, 2021, 9:30 a.m.
Yeah, that's LA PAC is a public affairs department.
Okay. And who prepared this media statement?
It might have been, because usually when we do this, it might have been Daniel Mauger or Glenn Rutland, or we usually go to them whenever we need media stuff. And or there's another lady that does assists us with.
But this is your statement. This is your statement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, did you type this up or did you give it to someone else?
I worked with that on somebody, like for the quotes. I did say those things, yeah.
Okay. So on April the 23rd, Mr. Steve, and I'll just read it. Yellowknife, April 23rd, Mr. Steve Norn, the MLA for Tuna-Wedley, has issued the following statement. I've chosen to identify myself as positive COVID-19 test results this week. The second confirmed test announced today is a member of my family and is self-isolating. Who are you referring to as the member of your family?
I want to make something really clear here before I answer that question. So when I came forward, I received a call the night before. Sorry, can you hear a cat in the background?
Yes.
Not
much. Go ahead.
Yeah, just give me a moment. So sorry.
Okay.
My apologies.
Deal with the cat.
Yeah. My apologies. Okay, so I got a call the night before this statement from Madam Premier, Carolyn Cochrane, pressuring me to come forward because members like within the government have become like, I don't know where this knowledge came from, but I know I did call a couple of members, but I guess it got out through within the GWT that I did have a positive COVID test, and Madam Premier encouraged me to come forward, and I did. And to answer your question about the second member of my family, that was Chaley Smith.
Okay, so that wasn't Cine.
No.
Okay. And then you go on to say, I traveled by car to Alberta in response to a family emergency. I left the Northwest Territories on Thursday, April 1st, 2021, and returned on Sunday, April 4th, 2021, crossing the border in the late afternoon, early evening. That's correct?
Correct.
Quote, I filed a self-isolation plan on April 1, 2021, as required, identifying that I would isolate at home. That's correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Then you say, on the evening of Monday, April 19th, 2021, the Chief Public Health Officer identified that wastewater testing had identified the presence of the COVID-19 virus in Yellowknife and asked that any person who was self-isolating or self-monitoring from April 14th to the 17th, 2021 get tested. And that was you, correct, Mr. Norn?
Yeah, I thought at the time I thought, I better do the responsible thing and go get tested.
Right. And you were self-isolating and self-monitoring from April 14th to the 17th.
Correct.
That's what you said there, right?
Correct.
And then you say,
Mr. LaPrairie, just a moment. That's not what he said. And you've misquoted him. What it says in here is that anyone who was self-isolating and self-monitoring on those days, not that Mr. Norn was. That's not what the statement
okay, well,
says.
let's just read the council just a second. Don't interrupt, please. The next paragraph, as I was self-isolating on those days. You see that statement?
The next paragraph.
So the very next paragraph.
It's not. It's the first.
Are you referring to the sentence that's starting as I was self-isolating on those days?
Right.
Yes.
I'm just reading it right now. That's correct. That's a correct statement.
Okay. So now you admit that you were self-isolating on April the 17th, 2021, correct?
So with our statements here, like we do work with the public affairs on this one. I think we might have, yeah. I think at that time, so this was a Friday that I realized, yes, the 17th was still a period of isolation. So that's correct. Yes.
So you told me earlier that you weren't self-isolating on the 17th, but in your media statement, you said you were self-isolating on April 17th.
And this,
is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. This goes just back into, again, context is very important here. So that conversation with Glenn Rutland, I realized, I made a mistake that I was supposed to be self-isolating on the 17th because when I went to the ledge, I wasn't supposed to be there at the time. So I better clear this up for the record with this media statement.
Yeah. So clear it up for the record. You realize that you were supposed to be self-isolating on April the 17th when you went to the legislature.
Correct.
Okay. And then you say, I went and had a COVID-19 test on Tuesday, April 20th, 21, even though I had no symptoms. Correct?
And I never did.
The next day, on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021, I was notified by public health that I had tested positive for COVID-19, immediately returned to self-isolation. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there's one
Okay.
really, really important factor that I think the public needs to know as well. I requested over the phone on numerous occasions to get a second test, just to be sure. And I never did get it. And while I was in isolation during that time, I was under guard. I was not allowed to leave.
Okay. Mr. Barclay, may we take the morning break?
Yeah, let's take the noon hour break and we'll return at 1:30.
And, could I just make sure that Mr. Norn is aware that you cannot speak to anyone about your evidence, Mr. Norn?
Until your
Yes.
cross-examination is over, till all this hearing is over in respect to your evidence.
Yes, I understand that. Thank you.
Okay. We'll stand adjourned then, please.
This hearing stands adjourned until 12:30? I'm sorry, until 1:30.